What is going on, everyone? Today we're going to be ranking all Call of Duty Zombies perk systems from the worst to the best. So what I mean by perk systems are essentially anything revolving the perks in Call of Duty Zombies modes. This also includes things that are kind of perk adjacent. They aren't necessarily perks, but they give you perk-like abilities and are available on either all or some of the maps within that game. I'm ranking them on how fun they are, how well designed they are, how interesting they are. Pretty much anything you can possibly think about regarding the perk systems will be included in the criteria for this ranking. Coming in the last place is gonna be World at War Zombies, and I know everyone's probably surprised, how could I possibly put the first ever Zombies mode in last place for this ranking? You gotta take the rose-tinted glasses off for a second and really just look at what the perk system is like in this game. You have 4 perks in total, one of which is useless on solo. Quick Revive doesn't do anything on solo in World at War, it only does anything on co-op. And then you have Double Tap, which Double Tap 1.0 is not that great, not compared to Double Tap 2.0, so sometimes you might not even want to use it. And then you have maps like Deriz that make using Juggernog very frustrating because there's a glitch with the Wunderwaffe where if you accidentally shoot yourself with the Wunderwaffe, it will disable Juggernog for the rest of the game for no reason other than it's just obviously a glitch. So yeah, this is not a good perk system. Anyone who tries to say it is lying. But of course, it is the first ever Zombies mode. It's the first Zombies mode with perks. So you gotta give it credit where it's due. Obviously, the Perk-a-Cola idea is just really cool, has so much personality behind it. So I appreciate this game for that quite a bit, but it does not mean it's gonna get high on this list. In number 10 spot is going to be Advanced Warfare's Exo Zombies, and the perk system in this game isn't really that interesting. There's just not much to it. There's 6 perks in total. 2 of the maps only have 5 perks though. It's just the last 2 maps that have 6 perks. You can get all of them. There's no perk limit, and 2 of the perks are kind of not that great. There's Exo Slam and Exo Soldier. They don't really do a lot, but then the other perks are basically just Quick Revive, Juggernog, Speed Cola, and then there's the Exo Stockpile perk that lets you get like more tacticals and lethals, and that's kind of cool. So I do enjoy getting the perks in this game. I do like the look of them, the fact that they're very different than Perk-a-Colas. They're not that interesting though, they're just different, and I appreciate them for being different. But there's just not enough to the system. You don't really think about it when you buy the perks. You just go up to the perks as you get through the map, you buy them, and that's about it. There's not much behind it, and it just isn't that interesting. In number 9 spot is going to be Modern Warfare Zombies, and Modern Warfare Zombies feels like a really weird game when it comes to its perks, because obviously considering it's an open world mode, they have all the perks scattered around the map, so it's very difficult to actually go to each of the individual perk machines to get your perks. So what most people do is they just go straight for the Wonder Fizz machine, which is always in tier 3, and that's pretty much where you always get your perks. So I don't even think I've gotten a perk from an actual perk machine maybe more than 3 times in my entire time playing this game. I'm not even kidding. I either get them from doing contracts, every now and then you'll get rewarded with a perk, or I just go to the Wonder Fizz machine. So that alone is already a pretty big issue with this perk system, but the perks are also just not very interesting. They're copy and pasted from Cold War, and they don't really do much different. And there's a lot of things from these perks that are actually taken away because there was a lot of interesting perk upgrades in Cold War that don't exist with these perks in this game. So they basically feel like lesser versions of the Cold War ones. I usually just spawn in with Juggernog and Stamina through the schematics, and then I'll just eventually go to Wonder Fizz later in the game when I have enough points, and then just get all the perks at once. It's such a boring way to get perks, but it's just how this game was designed. I don't think perks were really much of a importance when it comes to designing this mode, so it's not a great system. In number 8 spot, I've got Vanguard, and Vanguard actually surprised me with one thing that I really do like about it, but it just executed it so poorly to the point where I really can't give it that much credit, and that's the fact that you can upgrade the perks in game. I was saying so many times in the prior game with Cold War, which we'll talk about a little bit later in this video, that I don't like how you can upgrade the perks permanently. I love how in Vanguard they moved it to being an in-game upgrade system. That makes it so much more interesting in my opinion, because you're not starting off with these really overpowered perks. Instead, you have to progress over the course of the game to get better and better perks. But the problem with the Vanguard system is the way you do it. The way you do it is simply just going back to the perk machine again and again and again to just pay for a more expensive version of the perk. It's a tedious system that doesn't really work well at all. It doesn't work with the gameplay. It doesn't flow with the gameplay because I don't feel like running back and forth to perk machines again and again and again during the same game. I also don't think the upgrades were that interesting themselves. They weren't as interesting as the Cold War ones in terms of what they did, but I will say I do like the design of the perk machines. I like that they changed them into being fountains instead of the usual Perk-a-Colas. I just like having variety between the games. I kind of wish Modern Warfare Zombies did something different with the perk machines, but in general, not that great of a perk system. And in the 7th spot, we have Black Ops Cold War. And I know this is probably one of the fan-favorited perk systems that we've ever had. I've heard many people saying that this is the best perk system, but I just can't agree with that whatsoever. There are so many issues just completely destroying the perk system in this game. But I will say, when the game was first out, when it first released with The Machine, and even up until maybe like DLC 1, I did really like the perk system here because unlocking the different perk upgrades was actually kind of fun and interesting. The fact that you get these new upgrades every now and then, and you get to try them out in your next game, I did like that. But I quickly were able to get all of them fully upgraded within the first couple months of the game, and then of course later on they added tier 4 and 5 upgrades, and then I quickly did those as well, to the point where it went by so fast, and they're permanent. And so you can never use the weaker versions of them ever again. And even if you could go back to use the weaker versions, I just think it's not as interesting to upgrade them out of the game as it would be to upgrade them in the game itself, like I said for Vanguard, but Vanguard just went about it very poorly in terms of how you upgrade them. I think the different perk tiers in terms of what they do kind of lose their personality when you realize that after a certain point, you're going to have them all be fully upgraded, and it's just never going to be something you touch ever again. You're never going to have a grind to go for again in that game. You're never going to have any sort of differentiations between the tiers because you're never going to experience those lower tiered versions of these perks ever again. Another problem with this perk system is of course the introduction of the Cold War Wonder Fizz machine, which like I said for Modern Warfare Zombies is just a really stupid system because why bother going to the perk machines themselves if you can simply just go to this Wonder Fizz machine and get all the perks whenever you want. Even on a map like D Machine where everyone says, oh, at least on D Machine you have to wait like 10 rounds after opening up Pack-a-Punch to use the Wonder Fizz, it doesn't really matter because you're going to get that probably by like round 15 anyways, and by round 15 is usually around the time I'm going to buy all my perks. So guess what? You're probably not going to bother going around the map to go get your perks the normal way. You're probably just going to use the Wonder Fizz. Another problem with the system is the fact that there's no perk limit anymore. And yes, I do think that's a problem. I know a lot of people personally like the fact there's no perk limit, and I do like being able to get all the perks. Just make me work for it. Make me actually do something interesting in order to get all the perks. Being able to just easily purchase all the perks makes the feeling of having all the perks kind of not as special. It makes it just not interesting. I get all the perks every single game, whereas in an older Call of Duty, that's probably not going to happen every single game. But at the end of the day, I still do prefer this perk system over the ones we just talked about because, well, first of all, there's a lot of perks to try out in this game. I think there's like over 10 perks. And then you also have a lot of cool upgrades that, like I said, even though it sucks that they're permanent, they are still really damn cool. I mean, for example, PhD Slider has a lot of cool abilities. It's a really fun to mess around with, especially the sliding one. Just being able to slide that far is so cool. And then you got a perk like Elemental Pop that has the Electric Cherry upgrade. There's just so many little things to the different perk upgrades that were fun to mess around with the first time you got them. And I also love the design of the Cold War perk machines. I think it was such a cool new addition to Call of Duty. The fact that we went to this Dark Ether story, they didn't just copy and paste the Ether storyline perk machines. They brought them back and completely changed how they look, still keeping the same overall feel of the original versions, but just completely upgrading them, and they look awesome. In the number 6 spot, I've got Black Ops 4 Zombies. That might surprise a lot of people that I'm putting Black Ops 4 this high, because of course, Black Ops 4's biggest issue is probably the perk system. So how could it possibly be this high? Well, guess what? Although there are a lot of terrible things about the perk system in this game, there's also some pretty cool things that kind of make it go a little bit higher than these other systems we talked about. We might as well start off with the bad things though. First of all, I think the system just completely lacks personality compared to the other perk systems because of the fact that you don't have unique perk machines for every single perk in the game. Instead, you have these generic looking machines, at least for the Ether story. They're very generic looking that you then attach each of the perk to through the loadouts. I really hate that. I think it just takes away what made perk machines so special in the past, the fact that they all had their own unique machine, their own unique jingle. That was such a cool aspect of them, and that was kind of stripped away in this game. At least in the Chaos story, the God statues look amazing, so I can kind of give it a little bit of leeway there. But still, having unique machines for each perk I think is so important, and that was completely lost in this game. It also sucks that you have to decide what perks you want to use before even getting into the game itself. That doesn't make any sense to me. Deciding what perks you want to use should be something you decide in the game itself, because a lot of the times you might change your mind in terms of what you wanted to do in that game. For example, let's say you're hitting the mystery box and you're not sure what gun you're going to get because that's how the mystery box works. It's full of RNG. sometimes depending on the gun you get will determine what perk you want to get. For example, if you get an explosive weapon like the Helion Salvo, you're gonna want a perk like PhD Slider because obviously that'll protect you from the splash damage of it. But if you don't get the Helion Salvo, then you don't really need PhD Slider. So it would be great if I could decide to get that perk in the game itself if I get the Helion Salvo. But instead, the way this game works, you have to decide before the game even starts. So you need to jump into the game knowing that you're going to keep hitting that box until you get the Helion Salvo if you run PhD Slider. But if you don't run PhD Slider and you end up getting the Helion Salvo, you're kind of shit out of luck there. You're just going to have to deal with it and just hope you don't kill yourself with the splash damage. But even with all of that being said, I still have a lot of fun with this perk system because there is nothing like it in Call of Duty Zombies. This game has a total of 18 perks to mess around with. And I know a lot of people like to say that, oh, there's only a couple perks that are good, most of them suck. That's not necessarily true. Now, don't get me wrong, I definitely agree that there are some pretty clear choices for the best perks in the game. In my opinion, I think Stamina Up is a must. I think Dying Wish is obviously one of the best ones. I don't think it's required, but it's obviously really damn good. Winter's Wail is basically required if you are doing solo Easter egg runs, and it's overall just a really solid perk. I think obviously Quick Revive is really good, Victorious Tortoise is really good, Time Slip is really good. All of those are definitely good uses for one way or another. But the other perks, even the ones that maybe don't seem like they're that great on paper, there's definitely at least some sort of use to it somewhere. And even the ones that don't have a good use for them are still just really fun to use. For example, Blood Wolf Bite. I feel like Blood Wolf Bite's not that useful in general, and it's actually kind of a bad thing to run, especially if you're doing Easter egg runs. But it's also just really cool, just having a dog spawn in and help you kill zombies every now and then. It's just something about that that's just so much fun. Ethereal Razor has a lot of good uses, specifically for some high round runs, as well as Electric Burst even has some uses for high round runs. Even Blaze Phase has a couple high round run uses, which is crazy. Then you have Deadshot Dealer, which actually has a bit of an advantage over Deadshot Daiquiri. Bandolier Bandit is the one maybe I use the least amount out of any of these, to be honest, but it does give you more ammo. It's not that bad. Stone Cold Stronghold is useful for a couple of high round camping strategies as well. Like, there's a lot of them here that have uses to them. It's just they're, you know, obviously clear choices which ones are the best. And then of course there's Secret Sauce, which Secret Sauce is basically the solution to the problem we had previously with the whole not being able to decide what perks you want in the game itself thing, where you have to decide it out of the game instead. If you want to run Secret Sauce, it allows you to just keep buying Secret Sauce for a random perk. So if you want to just cycle between random perks in the game itself, you can do that. I've played many games of Black Ops 4 Zombies where I run Secret Sauce on every single perk slot, and then I just get random perks throughout the game. And it's actually really fun to play that way, and I actually really highly recommend it. Because yeah, you might get some random perks that are not that useful whatsoever, but in general, it's just fun to just get different ones. The fact that there's 18 of them and they're all kind of fun to mess around with, there is a lot of value there. And then of course there's the modifier system, where whatever perk you put in the 4th slot will have some sort of upgrade to it. And I think the system is pretty cool, the fact that you have to choose one specific perk to put there, and there's a lot of useful modifier perk slots. I also like the idea that some perks are not that great on their own, but once you put it in the modifier slot, they're suddenly amazing. A good example is Time Slip. Time Slip is great for speedrunners, don't get me wrong, but putting a time slot in anything but the modifier slot is really not that useful for the average player, but putting it in the modifier slot makes it so your specialist weapons recharge faster, and that is obviously very useful for pretty much any player in this game. And then of course there's also the elixir system in this game, which I know I said I'm ranking the perk systems, but I did also say perk adjacent things are included, and I would say elixirs and consumables in general have a sort of perk like feel to them, where they give you abilities for a short period of time. And as much as I think a lot of people prefer the Gobblegum system over the elixir system, there's a lot of elements of the elixir system I actually prefer. First of all, I prefer the fact that they're not nearly as overpowered. I think it makes the game a lot more balanced and interesting, the fact that you're not having people just spawning in with perkaholics every other game. Instead, the abilities you get are a little bit tamer. There are some overpowered ones for sure, but you also can't do the whole dashboarding thing to just have unlimited of them. So the actual purpose of earning them slowly throughout the game and then using them every now and then, maybe when you do an Easter egg run, is actually intact here, and I actually think that's a lot better than what the BO3 system is. But I do much prefer the personality of Gobblegums, and I also prefer how you get Gobblegums in terms of using the Gobblegum machines and then just popping it from there. I don't like having all 4 of them just active at all times on your D-pad. It takes up the whole D-pad as well. I thought that was a really stupid thing that they did with the Black Ops 4 elixir system, but overall, I do prefer how elixirs aren't nearly as overpowered. There's also the talisman system in this game, which essentially lets you just spawn in with something right off the bat. For example, one of the talismans lets you spawn in with an LMG. Another one of the talismans lets you spawn in with your Daniel perk already applied, or it lets you spawn in with a tier 3 specialist instead of the tier 1. I gotta be honest, I don't think I've used a talisman more than like 10 times in my entire time playing Black Ops 4 Zombies. It's really not that significant of a system, doesn't really make that big of a difference to the gameplay, but it exists. I think it's fine. It's not really a big deal. They're limited use, so I think it's perfectly fine. And one last thing I want to say about the Black Ops 4 perk system, I do feel like there wasn't enough ways to earn more than 4 perks on the maps. The only map that really feels like does great with this is Ancient Evil, because you technically can get a bunch of perks from the Oracle challenges, but the other maps have like 1 or 2 side quests to get like 1 extra perk, and if you go down, you just lose it, and you can't do that side Easter egg again in that game. So in general, this perk system is just not that great, but there are also a lot of things about it that I love, so it's kind of hard to rank it properly. Right in the middle seems like the perfect spot for it. In the number 5 spot, I've got World War II Zombies, and you might be very shocked to see this placed here, because you might be thinking to yourself, there is literally nothing special about the perks themselves in this game. There are these new machines, these Geistcraft machines, where you stick your hand in and get shocked by it, and you can get up to 4 of them. There's only 6 perks in the entire game on every single map, and in general, you're probably going to get the same 4 perks every single time, because 2 of them are not that useful. And you would be right in saying that. So why is World War II Zombies' perk system this high? Well, for one specific thing, and that is mods. Mods are a system in World War II Zombies where you get to select 3 mods out of like over 30 different options, and you get to spawn in with these specific mod abilities. Mods are basically like perks in a sense, but they're just like very specific things that you just kind of get lingering over your character the entire time you play. Some of them are universal mods, which will apply for anything, but there are also mods that apply to specific specialist abilities. Of course, this game does have a specialist ability system where you can select one of 4 different abilities, just like the field upgrade system that we see nowadays, and some of the mods do give you different upgrades to those field upgrades, whereas other ones are just general things. As an example, one of the mods makes you spawn in with more ammo right off the bat. There's another mod that lets you get up to 5 perks instead of just 4 perks. There's another mod that lets you hold 3 guns instead of 2 guns, which is essentially mule kick, but it's built into a mod instead of built into a perk. And I just absolutely love this system because I love the idea of having to pick between 3 different essentially perks before you get into the game itself that are completely separate from the traditional perk system. And it's so frustrating because I feel like Black Ops 4 took this system and tried to expand upon it by just throwing the perk system into the position that the mods are in within this game. But that was not the right move at all, because this system only worked so well because these mods were separate from the perks. And I'm so excited for Black Ops 6 Zombies because I feel like the augment system that they were talking about is going to kind of work like mods from World War II, where you're going to get to select 1 major and 1 minor augment for each perk in the game, essentially upgrading all your different perks. That's kind of how this system works. It's just not attached to the perks. It's instead just, you know, a separate thing where some of them are attached to specialist abilities and some of them are just in general just making your character stronger. And there's all sorts of different options you have, and a lot of them are actually really useful. There's not like clear-cut ones that are just the best ones to run every single game. No, depending on the Easter egg you're doing, depending on the challenge you're doing, or the high round run, there are different reasons for using different mods, and it was so much fun messing around with these throughout World War II's life cycle. And even to this day, I'm trying out new ones because there are so many options. I also do like how you don't have to down yourself if you want to trade out your perks. Instead, you can just cycle through the perks by buying another one if you already have 4, and it'll just replace the perk you bought first. It's not as good as the Infinite Warfare system where you can just simply go up to the perk and remove it, but it's at least an improvement over not having anything like that at all. Last thing I want to touch on with World War II's system is the consumables. They're useful, but I don't think they really add much to the overall perk system. They're just kind of there. If you want to be able to pop an insta-kill or a nuke whenever you want, you can use the consumables for that. There's a couple of them that give you a guaranteed weapon out of the box, which is pretty cool. Some of them give you discounts on perk machines or doors, and that stuff's cool and all. It's just there's not really much to it, so I don't really think it's that big of a deal whether you use them or not. In the number 4 spot, I've got Black Ops 1 Zombies. We're starting to get to some of the best perk systems ever in Call of Duty, and Black Ops 1 is a pretty simple perk system, all things considered. Obviously, there's no perk upgrade system here whatsoever, none of that. There's just simply usually like 5, 6, 7, sometimes even 8 perks on each of the maps, and you can get up to 4, just like with most zombies games where you use a 4 perk limit. That's all you can get. But what really makes Black Ops 1 work is that most of the maps in this game, there are ways of getting more than 4 perks. On Ascension, if you avoid letting any of the monkeys touch the machines whatsoever, you get a free perk. On Call of the Dead, if you kill George, you get a free perk. And of course, on Shangri-La, when a monkey steals a power-up and it switches between them, if you shoot the monkey at the perfect time when the perk bottle is there, you can get a free perk. And then on Moon, there's a way to get free perks with the QEDs. It's not very consistent, but it still exists. This game was just such a heavy improvement over World at War's perk system, where, of course, they actually made Quick Revive useful on solo. They also made it now so there's a lot more perks to choose from. Rather than just getting the 4 perks that are there, you can now actually have multiple choices. So you might not get double tap now, which previously in World at War you would kind of just have no other choice for all the other perks. But now you can choose between other perks. If you want to get Meal Kick instead, you can do that. If you want to get Stamina Up instead, you can do that. PhD Flopper, which by the way is one of the most fun perks in Zombies history, and that was created in Black Ops 1. So is Stamina Up, which is also one of the best perks ever. And like I said before, being able to get more than 4 perks through different challenges just makes it so much more rewarding when you actually get more perks. Like on Call of Dead, when you have 6 perks after killing George twice, you feel like such a badass. And I don't get that feeling in Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War when I buy all the perks from the Wonder Fizz. It's just not the same feeling whatsoever. In number 3 spot, I've got Black Ops 3, which this perk system is so close to being the best one, but there's just a few things that hold it back. Overall, it has consistently some of the best perks in Zombies history, where every map has pretty much the same 9 perks. There's obviously less perks on Shadows Evil and the Giant, but the other maps all have the same 9 perks, and all of them are really, really solid, except for maybe like Mule Kick and Deadshot Daiquiri. Those are the 2 that aren't that useful, but the other perks, obviously, Widow's Wine is one of the best perks in Zombies history. Then you have Juggernog, which is insanely good in this game because of how fast the zombies hit. You kind of need Juggernog. Obviously, Double Tap 2.0 is always going to be really solid. Speed Cola is less useful in this game than others because of the fast mags attachment that you can get on most guns in the game through the weapon kit system. Then, of course, you have Stamina Up, which is always a must and is definitely no different on this game. And Electric Cherry is actually decent in this game. It's not as good as it was in Black Ops 2, but it still is perfectly fine and it will protect you in some cases. And Quick Revive is Quick Revive. Obviously on solo you're going to want it. On co-op it's not as necessary. I also absolutely love the mask system in Black Ops 3. So not every map has this, but some of the maps do have masks that you can obtain through different side quests and essentially give you either upgrades to existing perks or secondary abilities that don't exist on the perks themselves. As an example, you have the Panzer helmet on Der Eisendrache, which essentially just makes it so the Panzers deal less damage towards you, at least when it comes to the melee damage. Not the best helmet in the world, but it still is useful. But the ones that are really useful are the ones on Garad Krovi and Revelations. Those are the masks you want. Those masks do a lot for you. One of the best ones, of course, is the God Mask. Actually, no, the best one is the God Mask from Revelations. It takes a while to get, but once you get it, you are insanely powerful and you have a lot of health. And you also deal a lot more damage. So you're just pretty much unstoppable at that point. But I love the fact that you have to do side quests in order to get these masks, and they're unique to the maps that they're on. I like the fact that you don't have the exact same masks on every single map, because that would take away the personality from them. Unfortunately, not all of the maps in this game let you get more than 4 perks through different quests like you could in some of the other Call of Duty games like Black Ops 1 and Black Ops 2, but some of them do let you get more. Obviously, Revelations, Garad Krovi, they have some of them through the challenges, and also there's like a special perk bottle you can get on Revelations through doing the wall run. But then on Zetsubo no Shima is probably the best map for getting more perks. You can actually make a fruit plant that could give you a free perk. So that's actually the best way to get as many perks as you want on Zetsubo no Shima. You just keep making those fruit plants, try to get as many perks as possible through those, and I absolutely love that system. There also is a perk bottle through the challenges on that map as well. Unfortunately though, Shadows of Evil and Der Eisendrache do not have a single way to getting more than 4 perks, other than, of course, doing the Easter egg. But if you do the Easter egg, you're going to get them on all the maps. That's pretty much been the case for a lot of Easter eggs throughout Zombies history. But of course, there is a consistent way to getting more than 4 perks on every single map, but unfortunately, it's not through the actual map itself, and instead it's through the Gobblegum system, which I did say before with the elixirs, I do like gobblegums. I do think they are fun to mess around with, but I hate the fact that you can just save them by dashboarding because it completely takes away the point of the system. The point is that they're supposed to be limited use items. The fact that there are such OP gobblegums out there, they're supposed to be limited use. You shouldn't be able to just spam them every single game, but because of dashboarding, that's what people do. And I think it kind of takes away the fun of earning them, because what's the point? Why do I even care about getting more anymore? It doesn't matter. You can just pop them every single game and just make yourself overpowered from the start of the match. And it also sucks that certain abilities were kind of taken away from perks just to be made into a gobblegum. For example, instead of having a PhD flopper or PhD slider perk, they turned it into 2 separate gobblegums, which was just really stupid. I also hated the fact that they only added 1 new perk throughout the entire season. The prior Black Ops games had like 4+ new perks in each of their games. Why is Black Ops 3 only able to add Widow's Wine and that was it? I don't get it, but in general, it's still a great system. There was just a couple problems holding it back. In number 2 spot is going to be Infinite Warfare. So Infinite Warfare made a great change by giving us a 5 perk limit instead of a 4 perk limit, which makes a lot of sense because there's a lot of perks available in Infinite Warfare Zombies. So forcing 4 again, just like the other games did, just wouldn't have worked as well. But what makes the system work so incredibly well is the fact that you can remove perks whenever you want. You can just go up to a machine, hold X on it, and remove it at any point. So if you want to mix and match between different perks at different points in the game, you can do that. You can start off your game with Slappy Taffy, which essentially just gives you a 1-hit melee till round 10. And then once round 10 hits, you can get rid of Slappy Taffy and then go get a different perk that you might want to use for the later rounds. That is such a cool system, and it just makes the perks a lot more interesting and fun to mess around with, because in prior games, you couldn't do that. Obviously, you have to down yourself every single time you want to try out other perks. And if you're playing solo, you only get 3 quick revives, so you can't just keep downing yourself to try out different perks. It doesn't work like that. Thankfully, Infinite Warfare, you can. I also really like that the Ghosts and Skulls quest gives you a full perkaholic, which I think is actually really cool, instead of making it so you have to do the Easter egg to get a perkaholic, because some of the maps you might want to use the perkaholic for the boss fight itself, so you might want to do Ghosts and Skulls before you even go to the boss fight itself. Obviously on Spaceland you can't do that because the Ghosts and Skulls quest you have to do after the boss fights, but for the other maps you can do Ghosts and Skulls before you even jump into the boss fight, so you can get the perkaholic and then you can fight the boss. That is a really cool system. And then obviously it's a super Easter egg reward. After beating all the Easter eggs, you now get Director's Cut mode, which allows you to spawn in with every single perk in the game right off the bat, which is really damn cool and an amazing reward. I also love the visual design of the perk machines here. The fact that they used perk candies instead of Perk-a-Colas was brilliant, because it keeps the same amount of personality that the Perk-a-Colas had while not doing the exact same thing. They even had these really cool jingles that go along with it. They're like full-on songs that are actually a part of the map. You could even hear them through the intercom on Zombies in Spaceland. So stuff like that was just so cool and really added a lot to the Infinite Warfare experience. My only issue with this system is that there are no ways of earning more than 5 perks through quests, other than, of course, the Ghosts and Skulls quest. But in terms of just doing like extra little challenges to just get like an extra perk here or there, you can't do those in this game. They just don't exist. I do really love the Fate and Fortune card system in this game. I think it is the best consumable system that we ever had in Call of Duty Zombies. It has a good balance between the different systems, where the cards are definitely useful and definitely help you out for certain things that you're doing, but they're not overpowered. They don't completely break the game, but they're also really fun to earn. I think the way you earn them is fair. I think the way you earn them is interesting, and it just adds a lot more to the game. And I would argue the Fate and Fortune card system actually has more personality than the Gobblegum system, which might be kind of crazy, but I don't know. There's something about that machine where you get the fortune cards from that just looks so damn cool. And there's like this little musical tone that comes out of the machine. It's just really cool. In the number 1 spot is going to be Black Ops 2 Zombies. Black Ops 2 only does one thing wrong with its perk system, and I would say that's the fact that 2 out of the 4 new perks they added suck. You have Tombstone and Who's Who. Both those perks stink, but the other 2 perks they added, which of course were Vulture Raid and Electric Cherry, those perks are great. Absolutely love those perks. Fun to use on their respective maps, but the other 2 perks, absolutely terrible. But the system itself just works so well. You have quite a lot of perks on each map. Some of the maps don't have too many perks, like Mob of the Dead only has 5, but a lot of the other ones have usually around 6, 7, 8, or even up to 9 on Origins. And majority of these maps do have a way of obtaining more than 4 perks through a challenge. On Die Rise, all you have to do is just make sure you melee all of the jumping jacks on the jumping jacks around. I think technically you actually don't have to melee them only. The actual challenge is to just not miss a single shot, and the best way to do that is to just melee them. You have to get 100% accuracy, but that's really hard to do. So just melee them throughout the whole round and you will get a free perk. Then of course on Buried, every now and then when the witches come, you get a free perk. It's pretty simple, like every 5 rounds or something like that. Whenever you go to the witches, you'll get a free perk. It's pretty simple. And then on Origins, of course, there's the whole perk dig site challenge, which takes a long time but is really rewarding when you go ahead and do it. You can also technically get more than 4 perks on Transit with some sort of strategy using Tombstone on co-op, but I don't really play co-op too much on Transit, so it's not something I use that often, but it still exists nonetheless. I also absolutely love the perk placement on some of these maps, especially Mob of the Dead and Origins. The perks are placed in ways that make a lot of sense based on how powerful they are. Mob of the Dead is a great example. Juggernog is the best perk in the game, obviously, and it's easily the furthest out of the way. It is all the way to the docks, which is completely far away from the best training spots on the map. So of course, whenever you go down, you're gonna have to go all the way to the docks to get Juggernog. It makes for a really good challenge, and in my opinion, that just works very well. And then when you go to the Victus maps, they have perma perks, which perma perks is the one thing that put this above Infinite Warfare. I would probably put it below without the perma perks, but I feel like the perma perks are just so much fun to mess around with. There are so many perma perks in the game, and they're very hidden. You have to learn about them through different videos, or maybe just over time you kind of learn how they work, and there's a lot that are fun to do. Of course, my favorite is on Buried with the PhD perma perk. It's like the only way to get PhD flopper in that game, except for of course on Origins, and it is such a fun perk to use. You of course lose it whenever you take fall damage, but if you don't take fall damage, which is pretty easy to just not do on Buried, you're going to be able to have PhD flopper for pretty much as long as you want. And one of the best things about the perks in this game is just how unique they are map to map. They didn't throw every single perk on every single map like they do in some of the recent games. Instead, there are perks that are only on certain maps. Mule Kick is not on every single map. You don't have Stamina Up on every single map. And I think it makes the perks more interesting in that way. A perk like Vulture only appears on Buried, but it gives that perk in that map so much more personality and so much more uniqueness. Overall, perks are such an important part to the Call of Duty Zombies experience, and therefore the perk system is also very important. And I really hope they find a way to perfect the perk system in the future. If you'd like to watch a video of me talking about how to make the perk system perfect, I've done a video on that before, so definitely go check that out. Link will be in the description. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. I will see you guys all in my next one. Peace out.